Honda's tough, new 85 ATV lineup shows the world that the hardest working, most fun vehicles just got better. They're fun, they're tough, and they're improved inside and out. But they require some new maintenance and repair techniques. So let's get going and find out what the changes are. The models with the features we're covering here are the ATC 250 ES and SX, the four-wheel TRX 125 and 250, and the FL 350R. After you've seen this program, you should be able to identify new service procedures for hydraulic front drum brakes and the compact final drive. And you'll be familiar with reverse gear operation in the ATV lineup. Although mechanical drum brakes are not new to Honda ATVs, hydraulic drum brakes are. You'll be seeing them in the TRX 250 and FL 350R. Final shaft drives aren't new either, but compact final drives are. And they're featured on the 250s, the TRX 250 and the ATC 250 ES and SX. Reverse gear was introduced on the ATVs just last year. We'll look at its location and operation on all these ATVs. This program is just part of Honda's service information for you. Use it together with Honda shop manuals and bulletins, and you'll have the whole story. We'll begin with the hydraulic front drum brakes on the TRX 250 and FL 350R. And here to give you the details is our expert Honda technician.
Thank you. These automotive-type hydraulic brakes have no cables to lube, and the lightweight aluminum brake drum is separate from the wheel. It has a cast-in steel liner, and the adjustment holes face out for easy service. Disassembly here is easy. Remove the cotter pin and axle nut, and the drum will slip right off. Inspect the linings, drum, and springs just like you do on mechanical brakes. To remove the wheel cylinder, drain the brake fluid, disconnect the hose, and remove the two mounting bolts. Check the fluid in the cylinder for signs of contamination. If it's dark, the cups are probably worn. Inspect the wheel cylinder bore and piston for scoring or grooving. Then check them for wear against shop manual specifications. Check the wheel cylinder cups and caps carefully for wear or damage. If they don't look perfect, install new ones. Reassembly is pretty straightforward. See the shop manual and remember these tips. Lubricate the adjuster threads with silicone grease and install the adjuster with a gold anodized core on your left. It's got left-hand threads. Use a sealant when you mount the wheel cylinder and the adjuster body too. The black painted spring goes below the spindle and the gold one goes on top. After assembly, install the wheel, aligning the hole with the brake shoe adjuster. Turn the right brake shoe adjuster up with a screwdriver until the shoes lock. Then back off 3 clicks. Repeat the procedure on the other adjuster, and don't forget to install the rubber plug. Fill and bleed the system, and you're done.
Now let's take a look at the compact final drives on 250cc ATVs. You may be surprised at how small the final drive casing is this year. This compact drive is designed around new internal gear ratios. It's lighter than before, gives much more ground clearance than a chain drive, and is practically maintenance-free. There are some new service methods and tools, and our Honda technician is here to give you the highlights.
Honda's made it easy to service the compact drives, but go by the book. To remove the drive, drain the gear lube, then disconnect the breather tube and remove the rear axle. Remove any shields, plus the trailer hitch on the TRX 250. Then, remove the left axle housing and the 4-drive swing arm bolts, and the 4 right axle housing bolts. And remove the drive from the swing arm. Now, here's a time-saving tip. If you're going to remove the pinion gear, do it while the drive cases are together. We'll show you why in a minute. This Honda pinion holder locks the pinion joint while you remove or tighten the nut. Just put the holder over the pinion joint and secure it with 4 8mm bolts. Then clamp the holder tab in a vise and remove the pinion nut and the splined joint. Remove the oil seal, then unstake the pinion bearing lock nut with a drill or a grinder. Now, Here's where our tip pays off. You can easily loosen and tighten the pinion bearing lock ring if you insert the axle through the ring gear and mount the axle in a vise for solid support. Use this new Honda lock nut wrench, or use the old one with this new attachment. Put the pinion holder back on the final gear case like this, and screw the Honda shaft puller onto the end of the pinion gear shaft. Be sure the nut is backed off far enough to allow full thread engagement. Screw the nut down until it contacts the pinion holder, then hold the puller shaft while you turn the nut until the pinion comes loose. Use a bearing puller to get the outer bearing races off the shaft. Then, remove the pinion inner race and adjustment spacer. When reassembling, use the old spacer if the other parts are original. But if the gear set, pinion bearing, or case has been replaced, begin with the 2 mm spacer suggested in the shop manual. Press the bearing onto the pinion gear shaft using the proper special tools. Place the pinion assembly in the gear case and drive it in until it seats. Then install and torque the pinion bearing lock nut, but don't stake it yet. You might have to change the pinion spacer before you're done. To separate the drive cases, remove the 8 case cover bolts and gently pry off the cover by twisting a screwdriver in the 2 slots. If the ring gear stays in the cover, heat the cover or use a press to remove the gear. Support the cover, then use the special Honda driver and attachment. There's a spacer on each side of the ring gear, so don't mix them up. When you install the ring gear, use the original spacer in the gear case cover, then measure the clearance between the ring gear and the stop pin with a feeler gauge. If the clearance exceeds the service limit, remove the gear, heat the cover, and remove the stop pin by tapping the cover. Install the correct stop pin shim to get the proper clearance. Then drive the stop pin into the case and recheck the clearance. Test gear tooth mating by checking the tooth contact pattern. Apply a contact indicator like Prussian blue to the pinion gear teeth. We've used yellow oil paint here to accent the patterns. Install the original spacer between the ring gear and bearing. If the gear set, ring gear bearing, or case has been replaced, use a standard 2 mm spacer. Install the case cover and tighten the bolts in a crisscross pattern. Torque the bolts as specified in your shop manual. Turn the gears several times, then inspect the contact pattern through the oil filler hole. We've removed the ring gear here to see the pattern better. Ideal contact is at the center of each tooth and slightly to the flank, that is, to the bottom of the gear tooth. If the contact pattern is too high, that is, too close to the top of the tooth, use a thicker pinion spacer. This moves the pinion closer to the ring gear and it moves the gear contact area lower on the tooth. If the contact pattern is too low, that is, too close to the bottom of the tooth, use a thinner pinion spacer. This moves the pinion away from the ring gear and moves the contact point higher on the tooth. A rule of thumb is that for each 1/10 mm change in spacer thickness, the pattern will shift 1.5 to 2 mm. When the contact pattern is correct, adjust backlash by shimming the ring gear. Put a dial indicator on the ring gear through the oil filler hole, then turn the spline slightly back and forth by hand. Repeat 1/3 of the way around, then 2/3 of the way around. Now, check your results against the shop manual specs. If the difference is more than 1/10 mm, the ring gear bearing is not seated squarely. Remove and install it squarely, rechecking backlash with the dial indicator. If total backlash is out of spec, adjust the ring gear position by changing the ring gear spacers. Remember this: total spacer thickness must remain the same. If you add a thicker spacer on one side, replace the opposite spacer with one which is smaller by the same amount. Moving the ring gear toward the pinion decreases backlash. Moving it away increases backlash. If you change ring gear spacers, recheck the gear tooth contact pattern before rechecking backlash. And when you're done, recheck the stop pin clearance and reshim it if necessary. After all clearances are within tolerance, apply sealant to the case mating surfaces. Assemble the case halves, then torque the assembly bolts in a crisscross pattern. Now, stake the pinion bearing lock nut and install a new oil seal. Install the pinion joint and nut, and torque the nut as specified in the shop manual. Then, turn the pinion by hand to make sure it's not binding. Finally, before installing the drive, apply moly disulfide grease to the pinion joint and ring gear splines. And don't forget to add the right gear lubricant.
Honda put reverse gear on some ATVs last year, and this year you'll be seeing reverse on all these models too. These go-getters back up with just a touch. Let's see how they work. ATVs with a 250 engine carry reverse gear right in the transmission. The TRX 125 reverse gear is in the sub-transmission, just like the 200cc models. And the FL 350R reverse gear is in the transfer case. In each machine, the layout is a little different, but the operation is the same. Reverse gear takes power from the engine through the transmission main shaft. A shift fork and slider engage the reverse idler gear, which reverses the normal rotation of the countershaft. There are mechanical lockouts and switches to control conditions under which reverse can be engaged, and they're similar to the systems you've seen in the TRX 200. There's a reverse inhibitor relay circuit, just like in the TRX 200. Check your shop manual for troubleshooting and connection details. Or review the full cycle program, Working for the Fun of It, Honda's TRX. There they are, Honda's tough new ATVs. Now you know more about them and their new features. The hydraulic front drum brakes on the TRX 250 and the FL 350R. The compact final drives on the 250s. And the reverse gear location and functions in the TRX 125 and 200 sub-transmission, in the 250cc models right inside the transmission, and in the transfer case of the FL 350R. Honda service materials will keep you on top of all the information you need. So see the shop manual before you begin a new procedure for the first time to verify specifications and alert you to new requirements. The tough new Honda ATVs are a winning product lineup. And with what you learn here, you're a key part of the team.